Hey everyone, trying a little bit of a different episode today. I'm actually in Indiana right now. I brought my camera and I'm about to pick up my dog in a couple hours, but went out to, I guess this is called Quibachi or something, state park. But yeah, I woke up like really early and didn't want to stay in the hotel room, so I figured I'd come out here and I guess I can try and do a podcast. I don't really know exactly what I'm going to talk about, probably just what I've been working on for the past like month or so. About a month ago on May 1st, I released a video on our YouTube. And eventually I'm going to move, I guess I can talk about this a little bit. So eventually I'm going to move all this stuff. Well, I'm not going to move it off YouTube. Kind of my philosophy is just put stuff wherever I can put it and let people consume it how they want to consume it. If it doesn't cost me anything to put it there, then, why not? But eventually I would like to have, I don't know exactly how it'll look, probably just like an RSS feed of like the podcast and videos and stuff like that, so that if people don't want to use YouTube, they can use that. One of the difficult things about that though is just figuring out the whole bandwidth piece, because I don't know, bandwidth is one of those things where it doesn't cost that much for an individual user. So if I view a video, it costs, I guess with inflation it's probably pennies, but when you multiply that by like a million users, that's a lot of money. So you need to figure out, I think the big problem actually on the internet with the whole economics of bandwidth, I think a lot of it comes down to payments, because there's so much friction in the payment space because it's so monopolized and just shitty. I think once we kind of set payments free and get people out from under that crappy system, I think it'll be a lot easier. For example, let's say I want to do a micropayment and just pay a little bit of money for a video. It'll be easier to do that without having, between all the different companies, it's everybody's taking their cut. And by the time it gets to you, it's I don't know, it just doesn't really make sense why. I don't know, I'm putting basically, well, I don't know, it does make sense in YouTube's case and stuff like that, but I think as time goes on and bandwidth used to be really expensive, now it's pretty cheap. So I don't know if these huge cuts that these tech companies are taking are really justified anymore. And I think the real way to tell if it's justified or not is not by me saying it's justified or not. It's by people voting with their dollars for now. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I was going anywhere else with that. I guess we could talk a little bit about CKD, which is what I was going to talk about initially in this video. So yeah, on May 1st, I uploaded a video kind of just going through what it is. So the tagline is kind of the stacked backend / open web services. And I went into this a little bit in the last video, but Stack started out actually as a hosting company about 10 years ago. And I don't know, ever since then, it didn't really work out in college because obviously, I don't know, my co-founder and I, we were fairly new to web development and all that stuff, and it was kind of a shit show. There were no tests, and actually, I don't know, Fred may have written tests, but I don't think I had many tests, and it was just really hard for us to continue to work on it and get the product out that we wanted without, I don't know, it was just kind of a mess. So long story short, that didn't end up working out, but it's always kind of been at the back of my mind, especially with, I don't know, just all these issues online and the whole privacy debate, and the tech companies are, I don't know, they just have a lot of control. And so it's kind of been at the back of my mind because the original vision of the web was you have all these independent websites and anyone can put something online. You don't really have to worry about these gatekeepers. It's a direct connection between you and your audience. Whereas, I don't know, the web that I see today, and the reason I put web in kind of air quotes is that to me the web is more of an idea, and that idea really centers around, I think, the whole peer-to-peer nature of the internet. That's what was so important about it. And so unfortunately, the internet's been great. I'm not saying oh, it hasn't done anything, but I don't think it's really fulfilled that promise that it initially started out with. and I had something to say related to that, but I totally spaced on it.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, so
we were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of polka dots.
anyway, pretend I just said something intelligent. I can't remember what it was. But with CKD, what we want to do is really kind of get back to that promise of the web. So the whole peer-to-peer vision, and you don't have these middlemen and giant corporations that can control a lot of what you do online. And so, I don't know, it was always at the back of my mind, just like, how can we make the web actually, like, I don't know, I don't want to like go overkill on the buzzwords, but like, how can we make it actually decentralized or distributed, as opposed to like right now it's decentralized in a way, but it's very centralized because you have like YouTube and Facebook, and it's just everything is in these big platforms. It's the data, it's the users. So what I want to do with CKD is really make it so that these sort of core web services, so like right now what companies will do will, for the most part, I think they'll go to like someone like AWS or Amazon. Jesus. I think it's too early. I'm like not making sense. So they will go to like AWS or Google Cloud or one of these cloud providers who has a lot of these different web services that they'll let them build their app on top of. Problem is a lot of these web services are technically open source, but in order to run them on Amazon, like everything that Amazon and Google Cloud, and well, I shouldn't say everything, but I think most of the stuff that you would need to like run a lot of these AWS services and stuff like that, it's not really feasible to run it on your own. And I think the source is closed. So what I want to do with CKD is make it so that instead of everything living in these centralized data centers everywhere, it would live on, I mean, I guess it could live in data centers, and it probably will, but it can also live on your individual like personal computer, or I guess theoretically your phone. And that way, when developers build an app that targets like CKD or whatever, they don't actually even have to pay for hosting. So like number one, you take away all of that cost for the developer. So right there, I mean, I don't think they'll really need to take as much of a cut because their costs are just so much lower. And then it just solves so many different problems, because when I don't know, like for example, like the whole like privacy and tracking, like this company won't be in control of all your data. They won't be tracking you around the internet. I think it'll be a whole lot better. And not to mention, in the last video that I did, one really cool thing that I demonstrated is called WebAuthn, and it lets you log into any website just using, like, at least in my case, I just use my fingerprint, but you can use, I think WebAuthn has support for a lot of different, like YubiKey. I think you can probably use like a Trezor. It's like a hardware wallet, I would imagine, to log into these websites. But yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff, I think, a lot of problems, I think, that we have been, at least as like a web development community, kind of like, I don't know, frustrated with. I think a lot of these can go away with something like CKD, which is why I'm really excited to be working on it. Unfortunately, so the past month has been a lot of what I'd probably call like sideways progress. So I haven't really made a whole lot of progress that I can show you and be like, oh, this is like how it looks different to an end user. But I have made a decent amount of progress on a lot of the back end. Well, I guess I shouldn't say back end, but like, I don't know, behind the scenes, like basically just the code, making it more robust. And what I really want to do is make it so that other people can contribute to it and not, like, I don't know, like curse my name and be like, why did he make it so shitty? Because the first version that I did was definitely like a prototype, proof of concept type thing. And not a whole lot has changed. It's just really trying to like go through and kind of, I don't know, I feel like the first like 20, or I don't know, I feel like the first 80% took like not really that long, but now this last part is kind of, actually I think it's mostly come together. So what I ended up doing is, for the channel implementation on the client side, I'm using a language called Rescript, which takes a little bit of a different approach from JavaScript, as far as like making JavaScript less shitty. So JavaScript, I think, started out, just like a little backstory, started out, well, and it still is, it's a scripting language, and I don't think it was really meant to support these giant applications that are built on top of it necessarily. And so a lot of different tools have come out, for example, like TypeScript and Flow. They're type systems for JavaScript, but I think they're more so like built on top of JavaScript. And then, for example, like ES6 as well, like a lot of these improvements that we're making to JavaScript to make it more like a functional programming language and have like types and stuff like that. A lot of these improvements are starting with JavaScript and then trying to get somewhere better. Whereas what Rescript does, and it was formerly called ReasonML, what Rescript does is take a language with a sound type system and all that, and then it compiles it down to JavaScript. And so, I don't know, it's really nice when you can get it to work. I think I tried for a while to write basically everything in Rescript, and I don't think that was necessarily the best idea. And I don't know. It's probably possible, but it just seemed like it was going to be a lot of work. And so what I ended up doing is I rewrote the channel implementations in Rescript, which actually is a really good use case or fit for Rescript, are these channel implementations. And maybe I'll overlay kind of what they look like. But basically, a channel implementation in Rescript, it's kind of similar to if you've ever written like Redux code in a way. It's kind of similar to that. So with Redux, you have a reducer, and then you have different actions. This is basically the same exact thing. So a channel store, or whatever you want to call it, that will have like an initial state, a reducer, and then also a list of, I'm calling them methods. We might be able to call them actions, but the reason I'm calling them methods for right now is because actions in Redux, at least, I think they correspond with like creating an event or dispatching an event. And Redux also has this concept of selectors, which are similar, but it's for reading state as opposed to like manipulating it or dispatching an event. Man, where was I going with that? So, shit, where was I going? Okay, yeah, so with CKD or whatever, these channels, they're basically the same thing as a Redux store, except for I renamed actions and selectors to, I'm just calling them methods, and you can define those in pretty similar way. But yeah, I'll probably go into that quite a bit more at some other time, just because I don't have my computer with me right now. But yeah, I think that's kind of about it as far as like where I'm at with CKD right now. Right now I'm just, again, kind of working on, I think I have everything kind of figured out exactly what I want to do. I just kind of need to wrap it up. And then after that, I'll be focused on another thing I didn't mention. So I ended up extracting a library from the CKD JavaScript library, or JavaScript code. I extracted a library called Phux, which is PHUX, which stands for Phoenix plus Redux. So I mentioned before that these channel store implementations are really similar to a Redux store implementation. So that was kind of where the name came from. So pretty soon here, I would like to get that published, and within, I don't know, maybe this month, it'll probably be next month sometime if I had to guess. That's kind of I quit my job at like the beginning of April, and then launched the website for Stacked on the 13th. So I'm kind of thinking, like, my ballpark is like around 3 months to get something out there into the hands of developers. So this won't be ready for end users yet, but what I really want and what the vision for, and I guess, man, I can't believe I almost forgot to talk about this. So the vision for CKD long term is really that it's not just necessarily for Stacked. So what I wanted was just a set of open web services that I could incorporate into Stacked.com and use it to build products. But I think long term, like anyone could contribute to this, and that's, I guess, part of my reason for extracting to well, I mean, like, number one, it's just kind of a good practice to, I don't know, separate concerns. But yeah, I mean, like, part of the reason, to be honest, that I'm open sourcing not sucks, doesn't suck, it's pretty good. Part of the reason I'm open sourcing Fux is because I want to attract developers, because I think what would really be cool with CKD is if we can get a bunch of people contributing their own services, and that way, I don't know, like, long term, I just want to make it really easy to be able to build a website. You don't necessarily need to have to know how to, I don't know, code for like a blockchain or anything like that. We can kind of just have developers focus on the CKD stuff, but then the front end and like your website and anything that you want to put on there, that's what I'm really excited to get to, is kind of down the road when we can work on making that really easy, because that was kind of the initial, I mean, that's kind of like why Stack started, is to make it really easy to start a website. But yeah, I should probably think about getting going and picking up Pater. But yeah, I think that's about all I got. So I'll talk to you later.